welcome to Mac for the Blind Winter Course number 5. You asked John Panarese all about the Mac. You sent questions, he's gonna answer. Let's get right into it.
This is the Mac for the Blind Winter Spring 2021 online course number 5. This was you asked me about the Mac. So I got a lot of questions from different people. So what I am going to attempt to do here is go through I kind of cut and pasted different questions, samples from different people, because I didn't want to I wanted to make sure I got to as many people's questions as possible. So if I miss anybody's questions, I am not trying to be offensive or anything. Please resend them to me privately if you don't feel that I answered one of your questions, and I will certainly do my best to answer it to you directly. Like I said, I got a lot of feedback from people, and I don't know, a couple of things might require a little bit of a demonstration. So I'm not sure how long this is going to take in the, as far as the hour and a half goes. So we'll just kind of play this by ear and see what happens. So one of the questions I got was in regards to the Mac, the clipboard or the pasteboard. And I think there was a little confusion in regards to this person, how the clipboard works. So basically, in essence, what this person was trying to do was take text from one source, let's just say a text edit document, and he wanted to paste it into an email to send to somebody. And then he tried to do it with a second paragraph to a different email. And he said that he got back basically what he had pasted the first time around. So the only thing I could potentially think of that might have happened is you have to remember to do Command C and make sure that VoiceOver says, text copy to clipboard or whatever. If you're not sure, what I would do is I would probably do a blank text edit document and just do a Command V and paste it just to make sure it's exactly what you want to have, in the document or email or whatever it is you're going to send. I've had, weird things happen with the clipboard, but I can pretty much say 100% that it's user error. It's really, as far as I can tell, it's not anything that's happening with the system or whatever. It's just sometimes me being careless. So I'm guessing that's what's happening here. So just make sure you do the steps carefully and that you test to see what's actually being pasted. You should not, be pasting entire like text. If you do Command A and select all and Command C, and yes, you're going to get everything. But if you're surgically highlighting and copying stuff with Command C to the clipboard, and then you turn around and paste it elsewhere, you should only have what was copied originally, not the entire deal. So I don't know, as I said, it might be just an error on the user's part. I'm not sure, but that's the answer to that question. Somebody asked, how do you put the Mac to sleep if there's no activity for a certain interval? In system preferences for desktop Macs, such as iMacs or Mac Minis, that is done in energy saver preferences. You need to interact with the slider. And this way you can set it. I believe the default is 5 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's 5. But you could set it to whatever you want. So this way, if there is no activity, the Mac will automatically go to sleep. The screensaver will kick in. On laptops, it's under what is called battery now. And there is there's a table you have to interact it with, and you have to select, I think it's on battery power or something to that effect. And make sure, again, interact with the slider. Actually, I think in this, I'm going to open up you're not going to be able to hear this. So, because I'm doing this from my laptop. Just going to take a quick look, because I'm not sure if it's a slider or not. Yeah, so it's going to be battery in the table, interact with the table and select battery, stop interacting, turn display off after. So you interact with the slider and I think the default is 40% or something like that. And you might have to kind of experiment and kind of push the slider in one direction, stop interacting and see what it's going to tell you. It will say, 15 minutes, a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever the case might be. But, once you have it set, then you should be fine. So again, battery on laptops, energy saver preferences on desktop computers. How do you give the Mac um, a personalized name when you first wake up the Mac? I'm not sure what this question actually means, so I'm going to take a stab at this. You can go into system preferences under sharing, and if you select file sharing, there's a place where you can give your Mac a specific name that it's seen on the network, meaning that like usually it'll just say John's MacBook Pro or John's Mac Mini. If you wanted to give your Mac a personal name of some kind and call them, Sammy or, Rufus or whatever, you could, I'm sure, change that in the edit field and call it whatever you want. I know that if you're at the login window, if you wanted to put like a personalized message, you can do that in system preferences under security and privacy. I believe there's a place where you can do a 3-line, personal message that, this is, King John's MacBook Pro, do not touch, or something like that. You can have a 3-line message. And then I know for like organizations, schools and such, you can, there's an Apple knowledge base article that explains how to do an entire banner. So like if you have a school or a workplace and you want something more than a couple of lines, you can do that as well. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your questions, but those are the two things that come to mind. Well, the screen and voiceover should go to sleep. This is a follow-up question from the same person, and when I explained energy saver and battery before, but voiceover and the screen should sleep at the same time. There's, as far as I'm aware, there's no separate setting. I mean, once the computer goes to sleep, voiceover should stop talking. I know on occasion weird things happen with dark mode where, what happens with the Mac and Power Nap is it will actually kind of sort of wake up to do certain processes like check mail, run time machine backups and things like that based on whether it's plugged into power or not. There are certain things the Mac will do if you're on AC power, but if you're not on AC power, it will sort of ignore things that are more power intensive. But I've had situations where I've heard voiceover sort of blabber for a second, like it's talking in its sleep. So I haven't noticed that in a while, but I know it caught my attention a couple of times because it scared the ever living daylights out of me in a very quiet room where I thought the Mac was sleeping. And it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I hear voiceover saying a couple of words. So, but I haven't heard that in a while. How do you troubleshoot when the Mac stops talking? That is a great question. I get asked this question a lot by people. I have a few sort of things I automatically do. I try, first of all, navigation keys. So I'll do voiceover left, right arrows just to see if something happens there. I'll do command tab, command shift tab, just to try to see if getting out of an application will get it to start talking. I'll make, because one of the things is if you hear sound effects but no voice, the chances are is you probably muted voiceover speech and from the trackpad. So do like you do in iOS with the 3-finger double tap on the screen, and that should unmute voiceover. So if you're hearing the sound effects while you're moving around and such, that just means that the voiceover speech is muted most likely. It is easy to accidentally do. Believe me, if your trackpad commander is on and you're using a laptop, it's very easy to do a lot of different things without realizing it because your fingers are just accidentally touching the trackpad, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're getting absolutely no sound as far as voiceover and sound effects go, then like I said, try moving the voiceover navigation around, do a command tab. I would even try Command F5, turn voiceover off, turn voiceover back on again to see if that's the issue. Obviously, if you're using a touch bar Mac, you're going to hold down the Command key and you're going to press the Siri button 3 quick times to toggle voiceover off or back on again. So those are like things that I would automatically do. When all else fails, I hold down the power button to force the Mac to turn off and I'll restart it. But I've really, other than beta testing, I've really never had, in terms of an active operating system, where voiceover just stops talking without a reason for it happening. In other words, it's not like Jaws, where Jaws just goes away for mysterious reasons, or you get the blue screen of death, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying stuff like that doesn't happen at all on a Mac, because I would be, I'm not going to go out on a limb that far. But I will say it happens far less often, at least for me, where I lose speech. And it's usually beta testing early versions of the operating system. I'm sure Cliff and other people on this lesson who have beta tested can attest to that when you're running earlier versions of beta, it's all, all bets are off. You have no idea what's going to happen. But when you have an active OS with voiceover, at the most, voiceover will crash and reboot again. It'll come back on, like you'll hear it say the voiceover message when it comes back on again for some reason. But I've never, really had a situation where everything abandons me and I'm forced to really just press the power button and restart the Mac. Usually that's in beta cycles. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Time Machine, because this is another question I've gotten from people, and it is a topic near and dear to me because I am horrified sometimes to find out and read things about people who have used computers for many, many years and don't back up their system, or they do it piecemeal. Once in a while, they'll copy files onto an external drive, but they don't really have a backup system or a backup solution. So Time Machine is built into the Mac. If you go into System Preferences, you'll find a preference pane for Time Machine. It's very simple to set up and it's very simple to manage. All you need to do is get yourself an external drive of any kind. I would highly recommend, don't just take a drive you have laying around with material, with data already stored on it. Keep in mind that when Time Machine runs for the first time, it reformats your disk into APFS if you're running Big Sur. So if you have data on that disk, it's going to go bye-bye. So what I would make sure you definitely use a blank disk, or if at the very least partition the drive into halves and use the blank partition to do the Time Machine backup on. Now, when Time Machine runs, you'll get a dialog that pops up on the screen that says, your Mac has detected untitled, blah, 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 whatever the name of the disk is. Would you like to use this for Time Machine backups? So you VO arrow, there'll be a button that will say use disk, or if you want to, don't want to use the disk, then you select the cancel. But use disk means that you initiate or engage the Time Machine process. It's going to take several minutes the first time through, because what it does the first time around is it does a complete copy of your operating system, of your system files, your user data, et cetera, et cetera. Subsequently, it only references changes that you've made since the last time you've done a Time Machine backup. Now, you can leave the drive plugged in if you have that capability. If you're doing it like over a network, if you have like an external drive connected to your router or something like that, if you have lucky enough to still have a time capsule, then it's automatically backing up hourly. But if you're not in that situation, what I recommend to my clients and other friends and such who are using Macs, Depending on your usage, if you're a heavy user of the Mac, you want to kind of make a schedule, a personal schedule, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Take a few minutes out of your day, plug the drive in, let it do its thing. If you're not really using the Mac as frequently, then maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. Make sure though you do get on a schedule. Now, if your Mac is not plugged in, it still performs backups. It does what's called snapshots. So with Big Sur, God forbid something does happen to your computer, you can still restore from a time machine backup because the Mac will use the snapshots. And then once you are connected to your actual time machine drive, it will then take the snapshots and convert them, into actual time machine backups. So it's a very easy system to take care of. You don't have to do much other than plug in the drive. If you're curious, you can go into system preferences under time machine. And I'm going to do that on this computer here just to kind of
system preferences window, preference panes, scroll area. In desktop and screensaver, time machine button. Loading time machine, window, toolbar.
So I have a backup already
set
up.
Image, time machine, backup automatically, checkbox.
So you have the checkbox to back up automatically. Since I have the time capsule, it does it automatically in background.
Image, Oahu, John's time capsule.local.
So it tells you what disk you're using. In my case, it's a Wahoo, which is my time machine disk that I use for backups.
547 gigabyte available. Oldest backup, October 4th, 2020. Latest backup, today, 12:54 p.m.
So you get all this information about your backups as you VO arrow through the preference pane.
Select backup disk button.
So if you wanted to select a different backup disk, or some people will use multiple backups, you can use different drives for backing up your Mac. So if you take your Mac to work with you, or you take your Mac to school and you have the ability to take to have like a passport or some small drive with you, you can have multiple backups. I really don't have a reason to do that, but I do have some clients who take their Macs to work with them, and they have a disk at the job in their office, and they'll do their backups there, and they'll also do them at home. So that's the cool thing about Time Machine, is that you can use multiple disks. You also can encrypt backups to make them basically password protected. So what happens is you want to save the password to the keychain of the Mac that you're obviously backing up. So in other words, your home base Mac. But just in case that drive you plug into another Mac, you're going to need to know the password for that encryption to be able to decrypt the drive and use that Time Machine backup. Now, Time Machine allows you to recover lost files, that were deleted and you cleared the trash. If you've deleted an email and emptied the trash, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, I should have had that. I should have kept that, which happened to me only a couple of weekends ago, where I had an email from an agency overseas looking for voice over Mac training. And I wanted to do a follow-up for the woman to make sure she got the information she requested, only to realize that I somehow deleted the original email. So I was able to use Time Machine and recover the email. You also can use Time Machine to restore your entire system. So, like what I did when I got my M1 MacBook Pro, I Time Machine backed up my old MacBook Pro, and I used that drive. So when I was setting up the M1, I just chose to restore from a Time Machine backup. So it brought everything over so that the M1 looks exactly as my original MacBook Pro did. So, that's really a lot of cool things you can do with Time Machine. And if I get enough requests, I could probably spend an entire lesson showing you how to recover files and things like that. Only because, unfortunately, I've been there a few times and have had to use Time Machine to recover things that I stupidly deleted or got rid of, thinking, hey, I'm never going to need this again. So it definitely will save your bacon at least a few times in your Mac life. How large of an internal storage drive is available on a Mac? I have to say, you caught me with that one. I don't know is it 2 terabytes? Cliff, do you happen to know? I think it's
I
two
think on
terabytes.
I think on the Pro, if you get it specially made or designed, whatever you want it configured, I think you can go up to 4 terabytes on the Intel, but on the M1 it is 2 terabytes.
Yeah, I think yeah, I think you're right because I don't really. I get a 1 terabyte and I'm fine. I mean, but I realize there are people now these days, especially if you do audio or video editing and rendering and stuff, that sometimes you might can't hard as it is to imagine 1 terabyte isn't necessarily enough for some people. So, but I think Cliff is right. 4 on the Intels and 2 on the M1s. I don't. This next question is: can you set the Mac to have a specific font in all uh, all the text areas of specific font size, etc.? I think it is a per app basis. I don't think that you can through the GUI do a universal thing. I think it's based on the application that you're running, whether it's Pages, TextEdit, etc. I am aware, and I'm just going to mention this. I am not recommending this to anybody. I'm not telling anybody to run out and do this because you want to be very technically savvy. But there is an application called Tinker Tool that allows you to do things that you would typically only be able to do through the command line. And I know in the past I've had some very savvy, um, you know, that you can actually set. I think you can set a universal font size and stuff, but you'd have to do that through Tinker Tool. And I have it, but I've really not messed with it, only because, as I said, it kind of is a backdoor way to do stuff that you could only do with the command line. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could probably do some damage to your Mac without intending on it. So I would only recommend Tinker Tool if it's still being supported. To be honest with you, as of Big Sur, I don't know if there still is a Tinker Tool because of the way Apple has changed their security and such. But I know some users had used it in the past. But I don't think, to answer your question, that you can universally set a font size and type for all of the text areas. I think that is a per app basis. How do you set the Mac to always save newly created documents in a designated location? Usually, if you do that through the save dialog, it remembers the last place that you saved. So if you don't change that, it should always save to that particular location. So that can be very helpful, but can also be problematic in the sense that sometimes when I'm saving documents, depending on what the document is, I don't necessarily want it to be saved to the last location. But if you're the type of person that wants to keep order and eliminate chaos, as long as you have selected that location through the save dialog, it should always honor that. And that also goes for another question that the same person asked about how do you make sure that mail attachments always get saved to the downloads folder? Once you've set that in the save dialog, it should always go to downloads. It always has for me. I've not changed that particular thing in mail forever. So anytime I save a mail attachment, it ends up in downloads. I do know by default with some people's new Macs, for some stupid reason, it ends up in the user home folder in the root directory of the home folder. But you can easily change that by going through the save dialog and just selecting your downloads folder from the pop-up menu. And it should keep doing that from that point on, unless you change it manually yourself. How do you always set the Mac to always open attachments in the text edit app? That really comes down to the file type that you're opening. You can do this in a kind of a back doorway through Finder. If you save the attachment, if you save it into Finder and like, let's say documents or downloads or whatever, there is in the Get Info window, if you do a Command I, you can manipulate the open with options, and you can always choose always open with text edit, but that is going to be based on specific document file types. In other words, RTF, Microsoft Word, DOX, whatever. You can set that, make sure that only, text edit opens those document types. But remember, once you make that change, that's going to be, permanent until you change it again. But you can definitely do that if you just take the time to do that through the Get Info window in Finder. So it's Command I, and you just work your way through that window. And there's a point where it's I think it will say open with, and the Mac will usually pick the app that is most suited for that file type. So in other words, if it's a Microsoft Word document and you have Word on your Mac, even though you might desire to open Word documents through text edit or Pages, it's going to always default to Microsoft Word. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay, so somebody asked, how to navigate through files and folders. That's going to probably take me an entire lesson, and I believe my next paid lesson is actually on this very topic for Finder. And I'll be going over in detail how to navigate through your file and folder structure. But basically, to kind of summarize this as best as I can, when you open a Finder window, the Finder window basically consists of three parts: the toolbar, the sidebar on the left-hand side, and the browser on the right-hand side. When you open a Finder window, the voiceover cursor, and it always starts off in the browser side. Now, browsers are one of the item types that require interaction. So you will have to interact with the browser. The other thing you need to understand is the view, the view in Finder. There's really two usable views out of the four that the Mac offers, and that being list and column. Now, I know somebody asked a question about this, so I'm going to answer it right now. Somebody asked the difference between list and column view. So I like column view because the way column view presents things is it's kind of like the traditional tree view in Windows. So you expand folders by going to the right. You collapse folders by going to the left, and anything that's in the same column is in the same folder or on the same level. So, for example, if you're in the root directory, which is the topmost level of your Macintosh HD, you have four folders: applications, library, system, and users. If you're on applications and you go to the right, you're expanding, you're going into the applications folder, and then you will be presented with the column that has all of your applications in alphabetical order. If you left arrow or VO left arrow back to the applications folder, you'll be back in your root directory. So you have collapsed the applications folder behind you. List view is a little bit different. List view is like one gigantic list, and it can be a little disconcerting until you understand, at least in my humble opinion, and there may be people who will disagree with me, but if you opened your applications folder with VO backslash, and I think VO spacebar might even do it, as you arrow down, you're going to have all your applications in alphabetical order, and then when you get to the last application, and you keep going down, you'll then hear library, system, and users. So it expands the folder, but it keeps it in one list. So it's one vertical list. So sometimes, unless you kind of know what your folder structure is, trying to determine where the heck you are in it can be a little bit challenging unless you really are used to that. So that's why I like columns, because you go to the right, you're going deeper into the folder structure. If you're backing out to the left, you're coming back, you're closing things behind you. And it gives you a better idea of the depth how your folder structure is laid out. So the root directory is the topmost when you open up Macintosh HD. The user folder list is the second level, and that will contain your home folder. So your home folder is going to be a folder that either has your first name or your full name sort of compressed into one. So for example, my home folder is called John. So I'm just going to do a quick
Mail, message, text, Finder, Samantha Ulnick, window.
Let me go.
Cycle through Windows, downloads, window, cycle through Windows, Oahu, volume, Macintosh HD.
So I'm going to open Macintosh HD.
Open, Macintosh HD, window, column view, in column view, browser, Macintosh applications, fold.
So here's my applications. I'm going to go down.
Library, system, users, folder.
So if I go to the right,
John, folder.
There's my home folder called John. Now, if I was sharing this computer with other users, the users' home folders would all be in alphabetical order. But since I'm the only one using this computer, I'm the only home folder. So if I go to the right,
Creative Cloud Files.
So this is my home folder root directory.
Docs, folder, downloads, Dropbox, Applicable Audible, Applicable Log, fold, games, Google Drive, fold, if archive, Musical Caliber, library, folder, movies, fold. So
I have other folders that other people are not going to hear. So because I have different third-party apps that have created folders in this in my home folder, but typically you're only going to hear desktop documents, downloads, movies, music, pictures, and public, unless you're using documents in the cloud. If you have your iCloud Drive turned on, you're only going to have downloads, movies, music, pictures, and public, because your desktop and documents folders are going to be in the cloud. Now, if you noticed, I created a
Google, Dropbox, downloads, docs, folder.
I created a folder called Docs because I wanted to have a documents folder that only contains stuff that I don't want in iCloud, but I want access to on my Mac. So I created that folder just for that purpose. But my desktop and my documents folders are actually in my iCloud Drive. Now, as I said, the course I'll be doing next, I'm going to go into really a lot of detail in terms of how to open, the keyboard shortcuts, how to use the sidebar, how to copy and paste, things like that. But that's kind of a summary of how navigating your files and folders go. And hopefully I've answered the question, the difference between list view and column view. Let's see. Okay, so somebody asked about activities and commanders. They want to know what the difference is and when you would use an activity. They are complete different animals. So commanders are the four commanders, the trackpad, the keyboard, the numpad, and quick nav. So you're going to assign commands specifically for that commander. So you can set up custom trackpad gestures, custom numpad commander key combinations if you have a numeric keypad, and then you can use the keyboard commander or quick nav. Activities can encompass custom commander setups. So an activity kind of takes a page. I believe JAWS has this ability where you can have specific voiceover preferences that only come into play when you are running that specific application. So one of the things that, for example, that some people get creeped out by Alex reading text for long periods of time, because Alex takes the breath between paragraphs, and some people find it a little creepy. I love it. I think it just makes it much more human-like, but there are some folks that would rather have a different reading voice. They like Alex for everything else, for menus, for for mail, everything else, but they don't want Alex reading their documents and when they're proofreading, etc. So what you might want to do as a simple example is create an activity that is assigned to text edit only. And you can customize what voiceover preferences that you want to have work only in text edit. So you can then select the voice category and change the voiceover voice to I don't know, Allison or Ava or, Vicky or whatever, a voice that's more pleasing to you. So what will happen is anytime you go into text edit, that activity will load and it will change the voiceover preferences to whatever you've customized for that activity. But if you command tab back to mail or go to Safari, then your activity goes away and your normal default voiceover settings are re-engaged. So that, basically whatever you set up for that activity only runs when you're in that application. And that includes hotspots too. So if you, for example, have an application where you've set hotspots in specific areas, you can set up an activity for that particular app to make sure that the hotspots you've created will always be in the same locations. So, that's, some people really make a lot of use of activities. It's funny because they were introduced as far back as Snow Leopard. And when they first came out, I went hog wild. I set, numerous activities up just because I could. But I'll tell you, as of now, with Big Sur, I really I don't use any activity. I have everything either deleted or disabled. I just don't really find it necessary in my daily use. But I do know a lot of Mac users, voiceover users who do have activities for specific applications. So hopefully, I've differentiated. And just to kind of also add this, you can have an activity with different numpad commander combinations or different keyboard commander or additional keyboard commander, combinations that only work when you're within that application itself. So, there's a lot of cool things you can do if you really wanted to make activities work for you for a specific app. Okay, somebody asked about Finder tags. It's really, it's a neat feature to use particularly if you're starting off as a new Mac user, and it gives you an added level of indexing for your files and folders. And you can have as many tags, and you can have your own tagging system that Spotlight accesses when it does Spotlight searches. So you could have tags for, work, and then, for me, for example, so, I have work tags, I have tags for specific state agencies, I have tags for, specific clients sometimes. So your tagging system can be as, complicated or involved as you'd like it to be, or as simple as you need it to be. So, you can access tags. When you open up a dialogue to save something or an open dialogue, there's this place in there. If you navigate around the screen and you have the full disclosure checkbox checked, the details, I should say, disclosure checkbox, you'll see a place for tags. In the Finder sidebar, there's also a place for tags. So, if you're looking for files, like you only want to see all your work files, or like, let's say I wanted to only see my files that have to do with the state of Washington, or with the state of Mississippi, I could use the tagging system, the referencing system to kind of, to just show those particular files. There is a take control of using, I think it's either take control of Finder or take control of using tags in Finder. If you really wanted to kind of research and look into how to really effectively use them, I would definitely, as I've done in previous lessons, I highly recommend the Take Control books themselves, takecontrolbooks.com, because they have a lot of Mac and iOS resources. They're very inexpensive books. They're easy reads because they're not written from a technical standpoint. So it's very easy to kind of grab one of those books and just put it on your iPad or your iPhone and just read it. When you have time. And they do have take control of searching your Mac, take control of Big Sur, take control of pages and numbers. So there are some really good resources in there, and just be careful if you are kind of even slightly technically inclined. You may walk out of there spending $70 or $80, and easily in a clip on the different books that they have to offer. So somebody wanted to know, why would you duplicate a file? This is really a per user thing. I'll give you from personal example why I like the duplicate feature. So I have a couple of different templates that I use. I have a reporting template that I use for state agencies when I have to fill out progress reports for my clients. So someone from the state of Washington was very kind years ago to send me basically a nice skeleton form for filling out a progress report that has like the dates of service, the authorization number, the amount of hours worked, the who the counselor is, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever information that a state requires of me, I could sort of modify this document. So I have an original that I use, and then I duplicate the original when I have a new client, or I'm working with a new state and they have specific requirements that are different from another state. So I can use that template, duplicate it, and then save it under a different name, and then make whatever changes I want to do to that. I do the same thing with an invoice template and numbers. So I found a really cool invoice template that Numbers offers as a default, and I've kind of modified it so that it has my MacForTheBlind information and such on it. So I will duplicate the original. Sometimes I'll take clients' progress reports. If I'm working with them for several months, I'll take their previous report and I'll duplicate it, so I have that information in terms of the number of hours that I work. So all I have to do is update the report with the new hours and any additional notes. So it just makes my life easier to be able to duplicate an original, so I can do whatever I need to do without having to recreate it from scratch. It's really just another form of save as, but the duplicate aspect keeps the original document open and opens a second window with the duplicate. So you have both windows where save as basically replaces the original with the new saved document. So it just we're getting into kind of splitting hairs here, but that's really why I would say why somebody would want to duplicate. And I'm sure there's other examples out there, but that just comes to mind for me. So somebody wanted to know, with Microsoft Word products from Mac, do they have to interact with each page? If you are in the document, you can just navigate from page to page just by, VO down arrow. I don't know if VO page down always works, but what you can do is you can do this with pages as well. I call this flyovers when I work with clients, because it's like kind of try to picture yourself being in an aircraft kind of flying over the terrain. So before you interact with an actual page, if you VO arrow around, if it's a multiple page document, you'll hear it say page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. So you're basically flying over those pages. And then when you need to actually access a specific page, you can interact with that specific page. So there's two ways you can approach going through your document. So, if you've interacted with page 2 and you just keep navigating down, you'll go through the individual pages. So you don't have to stop interacting and go to the next page and interact again. That's only useful to you if you have a multiple page document and you want to get from page 2 to page 10 pretty quickly. Then you can do the flyover, get to page 10 and interact, and then you're right there. For me personally, I find this very convenient. I know it's a little different for folks not used to it, but once you start to use it, because I'll admit in the beginning, I was definitely a little bit, I don't know what the heck this is about kind of thing. But once I started using it and I realized how effectively you can use it, it really works well for me. And as I said, it works in Pages. It works that way in Pages as well as Microsoft Word. It does not work that way in TextEdit, though. TextEdit is just, you interact with the document and that's it. Okay. Somebody wants to know how to format in the Pages application. There is a format bar. It's kind of like what Microsoft does with the ribbon, but in the case of the Mac, you use the format bar. So what I would typically recommend is using VOJ to jump between the document edit area and the format bar, and you'll find all your different options that you can format for double spacing, justify. And there are also keyboard shortcuts on the menu for centering, bold, italics, all those things you would do, you can definitely do in Pages. You just have to look around a little bit between either the menus or the format bar itself. So, I'm not going to do a whole Pages lesson here, but that's basically my short answer to that question. So somebody wants to know what boot camp is. Boot camp and virtual machines are two different ways that people use to be able to run Windows on their Mac. Boot camp separates the Mac partition and the Windows partition. So you actually have to boot into either operating system. So if you are in a situation for work where you need to use Windows for specific reasons, but you want to still have the safety and smooth running of a Mac, you can still create a boot camp partition and install Windows 10 and JAWS or NVDA, whatever your choice happens to be. The thing is, you have to start the operating systems separately. So for example, on the Mac side, you go into the startup, system preferences startup, and you can select, the Windows partition and start up, and force the Mac to, not force, but make the Mac restart into Windows. Virtual machines, you run something like VMware Fusion that allows you to run Windows inside of the Mac operating system. So you're not installing a separate partition, but you're able to access Windows and JAWS and do whatever Windows applications you need to do while being in the Mac environment. So it's actually like running a separate application to give you access to Windows. Now, people are going to ask, what's better, what's easier? That's really up to the user. I'll be perfectly honest. I've not extensively used either. I've done it for proof of concept in terms of a few years back, I had Windows running in a virtual machine. I boot camped a Mac a few years ago as well, but I just have this personal dislike of having Windows anywhere near my Mac, so I just don't do that at this point. And I'm not trying to be snarky or whatever, but it's just a personal thing. If I'm going to use Windows, I'm going to use it on my Lenovo. I'm not going to do it on my Mac. Somebody wants to know if Pages or Microsoft Word, what is better? Again, this is personal choice. I would say try them both out. If you are a long-term Microsoft Word user in Windows, it may be an easier, deal to use Microsoft Word on the Mac because you might have a lot more familiarity with commands and stuff. It's just slightly changing the keyboard commands. Usually, the Windows commands that involve Control key are usually switched to Command on the Mac. But I do have a document that has all of the Microsoft Word for Mac keyboard shortcuts. So if anybody is interested in that, write to me privately and I can send it to you. But I really can't answer, and I'm not ducking it. I really can't answer the question, what's better, quote unquote. I'm going to say, I could sit here and say as an Apple fanboy, that Pages is better. I'm not, but that would be a disservice because I don't know what your needs are. This particular person says that they do playwriting and stuff like that. So you may find that Word is more familiar and better to you. But, you know, Pages is definitely serviceable. The only thing I can say, you know, you can export your documents and Pages to Microsoft Word. But I have been told by a few people that sometimes the formatting, depending on how crazy you get with the formatting in Word, sometimes doesn't seem to keep when you go from Pages and you export to Microsoft Word and you open it, you know, in Word. I've not found this often. I've just heard it from a couple of people over the years, but the people who I've heard it from really do significant formatting and do crazy stuff that they need to do, because I had one person who was a returned college student, and her professor had all kinds of crazy requests for how, you know, they had to format with footnotes and stuff like that. And then the other person was I don't remember what they did for their work, but it had to do with submitting the Word documents for work. And there was a couple of nothing major, but just a couple of odd formatting issues that I think they actually got in contact with Apple and reported them as bugs. I think they ended up being bugs that I don't know to this day if they were fixed or not, because I don't remember off the top of my head what the problems were. Somebody else asks, what is relocated items in the Finder? When you upgrade to Big Sur, this is basically items that are not compatible with Big Sur. So the Mac kind of just calls it relocated items. You can always go, if there are any apps or anything like that, you can always go to the developer and ask them if they have a version of that runs, you know, that's compatible with Big Sur. I guess you could delete them if you don't need them. I would just double check just to make sure what those items happen to be. But that's basically what the relocated items are. So somebody wants to know, if they buy a new computer, how would be the best way to transfer their data from the old computer to new? To me, if you use a Time Machine backup, you can restore directly from your Time Machine disk. During the setup assistant process, there's going to be a screen that asks you if you want to transfer your data or set up the computer as brand new. You select to transfer the data from a Time Machine backup, and you can restore it that way. You also can directly, if you have the right cables and you want to check with Apple which cables you exactly need based on the model of Mac and what ports you have on your Mac, but you can connect one Mac to your new Mac, and you can use Migration Assistant either during the setup process or after the fact. When you have the new Mac set up as a brand new Mac, you can always go into Migration Assistant later and restore, you know, bring your account stuff and import all your accounts and your apps and stuff like that. If you do it in those two ways, you do not have to re-download the apps that you've purchased or gotten from the Mac App Store. Everything should set up exactly how it was on your old Mac. For example, as I said to people, as I said to you guys earlier, when I got my MacBook Pro M1, I basically connected the MacBook, my Time Machine disk to my MacBook Pro M1. And during the setup assistant, I just selected restore from Time Machine. So all I had to do was just, you know, import, just use the Time Machine backup. It took, I don't know, half hour, maybe 40 minutes total. And I got everything back set up exactly how it was on the old Mac. So, you know, it's really one of those two ways, just to make it easier on yourself, where you don't have to manually copy. And that's, you know, and I'm not saying that manually copying your stuff over is a bad thing either. If you've had a Mac for a very long time and you've done upgrade after upgrade, sometimes it's a really good idea to just do a completely fresh install and then manually put your stuff back on the system, so that you're not bringing over maybe corrupted files or wonky stuff that's kind of been, in the woods the whole time. I've done this a couple of times over the years. Sometimes you just kind of know when it's time. It's just sometimes when you're playing with your Mac and there's weird stuff, and you just kind of say to yourself, I think it's that time, or I just got to do a clean install and bring everything over, manually. And you'll be surprised, how the Mac just runs like a champ, even more so if you do it that way. But there's no big deal if you're going to bring things over from an older Mac. I obviously understand it's easier and sometimes a lot more convenient. Okay. Okay. So somebody wants to know, with interaction, I would, they have questions about, they're not getting the hang of interaction and the keyboard commands and such. So, I'm going to summarize this because, again, I could do an entire lesson on interaction, and I do have an audio tutorial on that I specifically have for interaction on the Mac, just like I have an audio tutorial on the Finder. But interaction is basically taking a closer look or diving deeper into part of an app's interface. So Apple has deliberately sort of separated parts of interfaces so that what belongs to what. So for example, my earlier Finder reference, when I said that there's 3 parts to the Finder window, when you open up a Finder window, the toolbar that runs across the top of the screen, the sidebar, and the browser. Those are 3 separate areas that require interaction to be able to navigate. So they're deliberately separated so that you don't get lost. You don't end up just wandering into the sidebar when you're not intending on doing that. That's why, and I can't help this phone. This is not my business phone. This is the home phone. So I'm hoping my brother answers it or I will kill him. And he did, thankfully. So as far as the keyboard commands go, yeah, I understand Shift Control Option down arrow, Shift Control Option up arrow can be a little key intensive. What you could do is you could use a keyboard commander action if you wanted to do, let's say, right option I or shift right option I, or if you have numpad commander, you can always set up, like, for example, by default, it's 7 and 9 to start and stop interacting. But you could always reassign that. Like I reassigned it to the plus and the minus keys on my numpad to make it easier. So, and then of course you have the trackpad. The 2-finger swipe to the right starts interacting. The 2-finger swipe to the left stops interacting. So there are, ways to go around if you're not really, comfortable or you're not getting the hang of doing the keyboard shortcuts. But I don't know who, I didn't put down who actually asked these questions. I should have probably done that at the top of each, question here, but I did not. So whoever asked this question, if you're really kind of lost with the interaction, contact me privately. As I said, I have an audio tutorial that's on the website, and you are entitled to a free tutorial. So you might want to, grab that one. Or if you have any specific questions, certainly ask. So somebody also asked, actually 2 people asked this same question about the messages application and how to get back to the messages area in the so in other words, when you're using messages on the Mac, you have a conversation list, you have a message content area, and then you have the edit field where you type your message. VOJ is probably the best way that you can go between those particular areas. So if you're in, you want to get to, let's say you choose from the conversation list, the conversation with John Panarese. So if you VOJ, that should put you into the message content so you can see the transcript between what you and I have been messaging back and forth with, and then you can use the VO arrow keys to explore that. If you start typing when you're on the name of the person in the conversation table, theoretically, it should automatically put you into the edit field, and you should just be able to type your message and hit enter to send. Now, if you're having difficulties kind of navigating back and forth between those different areas, what I would also recommend doing is setting up hotspots. So if you set up hotspots, you can then use the go to hotspot command to jump back and forth easily as well. And you can always set up an activity to kind of tie this to the earlier question that somebody asked about activities. So you could set up an activity for messages in which you have hotspots on the conversation list and the message area. So, there's a couple of different ways you can approach this if you really want to make it easier or convenient for yourself. Now, as far as I can tell, unless it's deliberately being done by Apple, there to me are a few little glitches in messages where if you select somebody from the conversation list and you try to type, sometimes it doesn't type. It doesn't put you into the edit field. So you physically actually have to go to the edit field in VO space before it will allow you to start typing to that person. Not sure if there's something else going on. I'm missing a step. I haven't really gotten that under, and it's like people have asked me about the messages tutorial I have, and I've said to people privately, that's the one tutorial that is not up to date with Big Sur, only because I have not figured out a way to easily demonstrate the stuff that will consistently work for the tutorial. So until I kind of wrap my brain around how to kind of show people the easiest ways to do this, that's the only reason why that tutorial has not been updated. Somebody asked about QuickNav, and I'll summarize this very quickly and easily. So QuickNav allows you to use the arrow keys to navigate. Mainly, I mean, Safari is probably one of the best places to use QuickNav, but you certainly can use it with, Pages or TextEdit or Microsoft Word. It can mess you up, though, if you're using Finder or Mail or such, because of the way navigation doesn't work once QuickNav is engaged. So QuickNav allows you to use the 4 arrow keys, either separately or in combination with one another. So the basic synopsis is this: left and right arrows pressed together toggles on or toggles off QuickNav. Now, once QuickNav is turned on, and VoiceOver will say QuickNav on or QuickNav off, so you always know. Once it's on, the right and bottom arrow keys pressed together, right and bottom arrow keys, start interacting. Left and bottom arrow keys, left and bottom arrow keys, stop interacting. The right or the left arrow keys by themselves, left and right by themselves, navigate you either forward or back by item, in the same way that if you're an iOS user and you use the flick to the right or the flick to the left gesture. The up and down arrows pressed together, up and down arrows, activates an item like you're doing VO space or a left mouse click. The right and up or left and up arrow keys, right and up and left and up arrow keys, turns the rotor. So either clockwise using right and up or counterclockwise using left and up arrows. And then the up or the down arrow keys by themselves, the up and down by themselves, utilizes that rotor selection. So in other words, if you turn the rotor to words or characters or lines and you're in TextEdit, if you press the up or the down arrow key, you will navigate by lines or characters or by words. If you're in Safari and you turn the rotor to headings, if you press the up or the down arrow key by themselves, you will navigate either forwards or backwards by headings through that web page. And then, of course, you have the single key navigation that you can also turn on with QuickNav within Safari if you want to emulate how Windows and JAWS and Window Eyes works, where you can do H for heading, shifted H to go to previous heading, T to next table, shifted T to previous table. You also have that capability as well. But that first letter navigation only works with QuickNav turned on in Safari. So I hope that summarizes QuickNav for you. Okay. Somebody asked about numbers and having VoiceOver automatically read row and column titles through navigating through a spreadsheet. I thought it does this by default. When I am in a spreadsheet and I'm going, it does say the column, the heading for, like, let's say I'm looking at my expense spreadsheet that I turn into my accountant, so I have the item, the date, the amount that was spent, and a couple of other headings, but it tells me what the headings are. I'm not specifically sure what this question, means. If the person is on at the end here, if they want to clarify this question, hopefully I can answer it. I will warn you that I am not a numbers connoisseur here. I don't use it in the same power level that other people use Excel and stuff. I use numbers for spreadsheets for turning into my accountants, my sales, my expenses, and I use it for personal stuff to keep some, personal, my budget and stuff like that. But that's about the extent. I don't do like multiple worksheets and, really super duper levels of formulas and things like that, just to warn you. And there are VoiceOver keys combinations to read rows and columns, because I think that was part of the person's question as well. I would have to look up what those are, because I don't want to throw them out there, because I know it involves like VOR, VOY. I don't want to just take a crack at it, but there are some VoiceOver commands for table navigation as well. Okay, I think I covered all of the questions that I thought we could get to easily. So I will open this up to the floor. Cliff, did we have any additional questions that sort of came in? I thought I heard a few.
Somebody is asking where they can get the manual for GarageBand. Do all Apple apps have their manuals built in their help menu?
Yes. And if you want specific VoiceOver help, I would highly recommend going to speak to Keith Reedy, icanworkthisthing.com. And Cliff, have you been messing with GarageBand?
No, I've been specifically messing with Audio Hijack and Amadeus Pro.
There is a guy too, if you look him up. I don't know if he has a website, but I know he does training and stuff in audio apps, named Mike Chichillo from Montreal, Canada. He's a great resource for that stuff. But Keith Reedy has a website called icanworkthisthing.com, and he's got some tutorials and stuff on there, and you can write to him privately. I know he's kind of in the know as far as different people that are using those apps in a professional or non-professional setting. So he would probably be a good resource to direct you to any specific guides. I know years ago, Ricardo Walker was doing some podcasts, but I don't know if he's still doing that stuff and if he still has it available or not.
Yeah, I haven't seen his name in a while.
Yeah, I haven't either. I don't know what happened to him.
Me and him,
I know he's from New York. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know he was working for Helen Keller.
He lives in your area down there on Long Island. Yeah. But I mean, I haven't talked to him in over 4 or 5 years, so it's been a while.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing these days. So, but he was doing GarageBand stuff.
Sorry, my name is Jessie. I did send you a question, John, but I didn't send it to Cliff. I'm a trainer myself, but I'm curious, when you train people on Mac remotely, which software do you use? I've been trying to figure that out so that I can do Mac remotely.
TeamViewer is probably your best option. Unfortunately, ARD, Apple Remote Desktop, is not accessible yet, even though Apple had mentioned to me or hinted to me that ARD4 was supposed to include voiceover support, and I guess it never got into that build. So TeamViewer is one way to do it. As long as you can hear, you might want to be on the phone with the person, because when you start controlling their Mac and they have voiceover on, you'll have to listen for their Mac. And another sort of backdoor way to do it, and I've done it this way with a couple of clients too, is actually through the Messages application. You can do a screen sharing thing and an audio chat. So I've done this where a person has let me control their Mac, and through the screen sharing and the audio, I can hear what's going on with their Mac. And I've actually been able to, help them copy apps to the, they were having trouble copying apps to the applications folder. They were having trouble finding things in system preferences. So I was sort of walking them through by actually controlling their computer. So, if you're willing to be patient, those are the two approaches. I mean, TeamViewer would probably be the more professional way of doing it. But if push comes to shove, I certainly wouldn't turn away from using Messages.
I use TeamViewer on Windows side, but I believe they terminated the free version. I couldn't use TeamViewer now. On Windows
I'm not
side.
sure. I mean, there is a version for Mac, but I don't know if it's paid or if it's free or not. I haven't used it. The last couple of times I've needed to do this, I've done it through Messages, only because it was just convenient and quick at the time I needed to do it.
So normally, do you just talk to them on the phone to train them?
Yeah. That's what the way I train people is over the phone or by Zoom or FaceTime.
I was about to say Zoom, and both Zoom and WebEx, you can screen
WebEx
share.
Too. Yeah.
One way that I do it though is I use a program called Loopback, so they can hear my audio and follow along with what I'm doing. So that's another backdoor way of doing it.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Sounds good.
Any other questions?
Oh, is it all right if I raised my hand? But
oh yeah, I thought. Yeah, I'm sorry, Chanel. Go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I was specifically trying to view a spreadsheet. Unfortunately, created in Excel, and it's like a table or whatever listing. So there's several columns, and I want to be able to go down. Let's say the host name column, while hearing the stuff announced in the event name. That's just kind of so. I don't know, maybe voiceover can't read two things, or maybe I was trying to figure out how in the heck to define the table rows and headers and whatever in numbers, because maybe that would have helped.
Yeah, there is a way to do all this stuff. Like I said, though, I'm not an aficionado with numbers.
Okay.
But I know it can be done, and I know there are voiceover commands to read columns and rows.
Yeah,
and you
VOC.
also can use hotspots. You can also use hotspots. So set up a hotspot in, let's say you're in the host column, but you want to hear the event. So set up a hotspot. So this way you can just have it read the hotspot while you're going down, the row, the column.
Okay. I'll try that. Okay. Yeah. And sometimes, so VOC is supposed to, pressing it twice is supposed to read like the content column or whatever. VOR, pressing it twice reads the row, but it only starts from your current cursor position forward, I think. But VOC, that's also the command to read the current character. So sometimes it reads the character rather than the column.
Yeah. And there's also, isn't there something with Y, VO?
Yeah, VO
command
Y moves to the next column, I think.
Yeah, I forget. I remember seeing it in the master voiceover commands list, and I always thought to myself, I got to try some of these out, and I just never got around to doing it.
Okay. Yes, I know some of them are kind of interesting.
Yeah,
but
you're always like, I wonder what that does.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I have to leave now, but thank you.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Hello. May I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. When someone sent me a mail and then with attachment, I've been saving it to my document, and I found it in the document. You mentioned that you usually save it in download. So how to find it again? To click the download button?
So when you're going to save attachments in the dialog that comes up, if you navigate to the right, there's usually like a pop-up menu. And if you voice over spacebar on that and you VO down arrow, downloads should be one of the other options. So you VO space when you hear downloads, and then it should then save to the downloads folder.
And to find it, you can click the download button in the dock.
You mean to get to your downloads? Do you mean to navigate to your downloads folder? Or,
Yeah.
or if you're gonna, in Finder, if you do command option L, that will open your downloads folder in Finder automatically. Command option L.
What about the download button in the dock?
You can do that too, but I don't know by default if you navigate down, if it's going to show you it properly. You know what? Email me if you really want to do that route. Email me, and there's two things you need to change in the dock under downloads to make it work properly with VoiceOver, and I'll look it up for you. I just don't remember the two things you have to check. So I'll spell out the steps for you, but just write to me privately if you really want to access. But I mean, it's much easier just to go to Finder and do command option L and just, go through it that way.
So when I delete all the mail I don't need anymore, I cannot find it in the trash can button. Where did it go?
It's going to be in your trash folder, but you may have to go to your mailbox table and navigate to the trash and then look, and then go into the trash folder. Yeah, I mean, how many
I just
accounts?
had that happen to me.
Yeah.
I looked
Sometimes
at every single
yes.
trash folder on my computer.
Just make sure you're not using the command that bypasses the trash, because you don't want to bypass the trash and unless you're going to use Time Machine to recover it later. But it should be in your trash folder. I mean, that's typically what happens unless there's something weird going on. Like sometimes people who are using Gmail have reported some odd stuff happen when they delete.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't really speak for that, but that was what I would recommend is just making sure you navigate to the mailbox for trash. Cliff had brought up with me, if you're missing any of your unified trash, your unified junk mail, unified, drafts and stuff, if you have multiple accounts, Cliff, if you want to explain how they can get those back, because that was really cool.
Oh, you could do unified trash too, and
Yes.
not have to hunt through every single trash
Yeah,
folder
you
on
can have a unified
your
draft,
Mac like I did yesterday.
unified
Yeah.
draft, sent, and trash, even junk. So if you have made them or removed them from your favorites like I did, thinking I can go find them whenever I felt like it, in Big Sur, it's not possible unless you do this. You go to the top of your mailbox list, or you interact with your mailboxes table and go to the very top of the list. You should hear favorites add button. If you don't hear that, then do VO command F5. You may have to add the function key depending on how your function keys are set up. Once you do that, that's routing your cursor to the very spot where you are. You'll hear favorites add button. Well, this was so dumbfounding I had to smack myself twice. All you have to do is interact there. If you VO right arrow, there will be add button. You VO spacebar on that, and the pop up with all your mailboxes, unified trash, unified junk, unified sent, unified draft will all be there, and you can just add it back to your favorites. That way you can get to it easily.
And it is cool.
VO command F5 at the top of the
if
folder
you're not
list.
seeing the if you don't hear the add button.
Yeah, because
at the
that
top of the
favorites
list.
bar has given me a lot of grief because I didn't know that I had to add. That's nice though, because if you have more mailboxes than you should, then you're going to have all those trash folders.
Yeah, and it's just good to have unified trash, unified junk. It just makes it easier when you're looking for things that especially if you have multiple accounts and you don't know where in the world that came from. sometimes I don't pay attention to what mail account did that come? Was that my Mac for the Blind? Was that my iCloud? So it's great to have the unified, because this way, if you're going to search, it's going to search them all.
That is really nice. That's
Hi, this is Judy Birch. I just have a comment.
Yep.
You guys were talking about TeamViewer, and I just want to let you know that I have TeamViewer. My daughter is a big Apple fan, and she's actually the one who talked me into getting my Mac, my Mac to begin with. But anyway, she's downloaded TeamViewer, and we've used it several times. And I don't pay anything. I got a free version, so.
Do you know what the current version is, Judy? Do you know if it's like version 10?
How would I know? I mean, let's see. I mean, I got my.
It usually from the about. So like if you're in TeamViewer, if you go under the TeamViewer menu, there's usually an about. And if you VO space, that text area usually says the version and build number.
Okay, hang on. Let me see. Can I just closed it.
TeamViewer open 22 of 30. TeamViewer window. Start TeamViewer with system. Checkbox test.
Okay, you got to tell me what to do because
So do a VOM.
Option space.
Okay, VOM.
Menu bar Apple.
Okay.
So go to the right once.
Press TeamViewer.
Okay.
I'll go down.
To open this TeamViewer menu, 7 items. About TeamViewer.
About.
VO space.
Use this menu item. Press About TeamViewer. About TeamViewer window. Okay. Default button. Okay. Default button.
All right. So navigate around there to the left to see if there's.
Copyright sign 2005 3. TeamViewer ID 726777266. Date Wednesday, February 17th, 2021 at 6:13. Version 15.15.5. 40 dB.
15.15.5.
There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you and your daughter get that from the App Store? Or did you have to do a Google search for it?
Actually, my friend Paul got me a printer for Christmas, and I was trying to get it connected, and finally I called Ira, and they suggested I download it. So I just went to the website and downloaded it.
Yeah, so you got it directly from them, because I don't think it's in the Mac App Store. I could be wrong, but the last time I remember, it wasn't there. But I'm running an much older version though. You have a much newer version. I think I have like 11 or 12 or something.
Yeah.
That's why I was curious as to what version it's up to.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know. It's, I guess it's updated or whatever. But anyway, I just wanted to contribute that.
No, thank you. That's very useful information. Now I know what to look for.
Right. All righty. Gonna mute myself again.
All right. Thank you, Judy.
Hi there. This is Tony from New Jersey.
Hey, Tony.
How you doing? I'm the guy that posted the question about the GarageBand, and I'm glad that you gave the resource for the. I actually should have been more specific, but I hated typing, so I didn't want to. You gave me a more specific resource, which was using it with VoiceOver, and I appreciate that. Could you mentioned earlier to a few people to email you if they had any questions? Would you be able to provide that email for us?
John at MacForTheBlind.com. JOHN at MacForTheBlind.com.
Very good. I'm looking forward to checking out your book on the your tutorial on the Finder. Thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate.
Thanks, Tony. You're my neighbor. I'm in New York, so you're my neighbor.
Yeah, I knew you were from New York. I can just listen to you 2 seconds from your now. I know it. Thanks a lot, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right.
This is Cam. Regarding the copy and paste, after I make a copy of something and I find out that I decide I don't want to paste it somewhere else, how do I delete that thing I already copied from the
Well, the clipboard, the next time you copy something to the clipboard, it will override it. So, it's there until you overwrite it with something else. So I don't think maybe there is a command to clear the clipboard. I vaguely recall seeing that in the Apple list of keyboard commands somewhere, that there used to be at least a command that you can clear the clipboard. But to my knowledge, the easiest way to do it is just copy something else to it.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? We have, let's see what I don't even know what time it is, which is great.
No, if there ain't no more questions.
No,
on
we
the
got about
chat
5
either.
more minutes. Yeah, we got about 5 more minutes.
You mentioned the Passover. Say if I wanted on the pages, I want to jump from page 1 to page 10. What are the shortcut keys for that?
There's really no shortcut key. So when you interact with the document layout area, and you have a multiple page document, if you VO arrow around the screen, you should hear it say page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, etc. Then you just stop and interact with that exact page that you want to, you want to get into. So it's just a level down from the document layout area. If I had a multiple page document handy, I would show it to you, but I don't think I have one in Pages right now. I think I only have a single page.
So just pressing the VO keys?
Yes.
But no.
So you're saying that's when you have not interacted with the
actual, with the actual page itself. You're just one level above that.
So you're making use of the fact that you have to interact
instead
of letting it get in your way.
Right.
So you could, that's the thing. If you think too much like Windows, you can sometimes snag yourself when you don't need to.
That's why I always tell people, throw your Windows knowledge aside, because it will trip you up, because sometimes people have an expectation that the voiceover in the Mac is going to work like JAWS, and it's not. And that's where I think people go sort of take the wrong turn because of their expectation.
I think that's the problem with the interaction. Oh, go ahead.
John, this is Rita. Related to navigation in a document, for example, when you're in a text edit document, and say you've got 10 pages and you want to navigate to page 5. I'm having difficulty navigating to page 5.
Yeah, because you don't have that flyby thing you have in Pages. So sometimes you can do VO page down if you have a full-size keyboard. Sometimes that will cycle quickly, but it doesn't always work. And I've not been able to figure out if it has to do with formatting codes or something.
Right. I can't get it to work. I can't get VO page down to work.
Yeah, that's weird. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Is
How
there
about
a
just
faster
page
way?
down? How about page down by itself?
Nope.
That doesn't work either.
If you could think of a way for me to faster navigate,
I will let you know. I'm going to take
Okay.
a closer look, because I use text edit all the time. So I'll take a closer look.
Yeah, I'm in such a I use text edit because I'm just learning, and I thought it would be simpler. But I have multi-page document, and I'm like, oh my God, arrow. I know how to get to the top. I know how to get to the bottom, but arrowing through, it's getting real old.
Yeah. Now I'll take a look, and I'll let you know. What
I might
if I can
just
find anything.
skip text edit and go straight to Pages, because I'm starting to think that it's going to be a lot of trouble, because you can't use it it doesn't really work that well with the other devices. And
well, it's that, like I said, it's always user preference. And I think Pam had a question.
Yes, I do. And this is probably the dumbest one you've gotten all day. Exactly what is a hotspot?
Hotspot is not a dumb question, because some people aren't aware of it. It is a voiceover place marker that you can put in a certain part of the screen, and then you can monitor it, you can jump to it. So you set it by doing Control Option Shift and one of the
number keys.
Yeah. And then there's different.
I know of it, but I just didn't know what it does.
Yeah, so it's just basically marking a place on the screen that you can monitor or you can go to.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay.
Hey, John, this is Brian. And one thing about, I like text edit a lot. I've never used Pages because I want it really simple. But I agree with Rita, the paging is a little bit difficult. One this is not exactly a workaround, but I use VOF3. So Rita, you maybe try VOF3. It's not a page issue, but it's a word count issue. So if you're just sort of guesstimating how much is in this document, and then you go, and then you move around, you can use the VOF3 key combination to at least tell you sort of where you are in the document. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, because that's,
but it's helped me a lot.
Voiceover.
John, it's helped me many times when I...
No, it makes perfect sense because it tells you what's in the voiceover cursor at that
exactly.
time. So
no, wait, but if you don't interact with the document, like I forget to do all the time, it won't do it. And so for weeks, I forgot the command. I had amnesia. I don't know what. And, I finally realized if you don't interact with the document, you don't get that feedback. So that's just another little thing.
Okay.
Thanks. Anyway, it's a great,
all right.
Really nice.
All right, guys, we're going to have to end this here.